The emergency call came through on a quiet Tuesday afternoon when Hunter Tate arrived at the Willowbrook estate to fix a malfunctioning pool filter. What he found instead was a woman floating face down in the crystal blue water, her designer dress billowing around her like a dark cloud. Without hesitation, the former veteran and single father dove in fully clothed, his instincts screaming one thing: save her. He dragged her lifeless body to the pool deck, performed CPR until she gasped back to life, and waited with her until paramedics arrived. He never asked for her name, never expected to see her again. But 3 days later, when a fleet of black SUVs pulled up to his modest apartment, Hunter discovered the truth. The woman he saved wasn't just anyone. She was Ella White, Billionaire, CEO of White Global Enterprises. And what she said next would change his life forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Hunter Tate had seen his share of emergencies in his 38 years, but nothing prepared him for what he found that Tuesday afternoon at the Willowbrook estate. He had been called in as an emergency contractor to fix a malfunctioning pool filtration system at one of the most exclusive properties in Ashford Heights. The iron gates had opened automatically when he arrived, his beat-up work van looking completely out of place against the backdrop of manicured hedges and marble fountains. The estate sprawled across what must have been 10 acres, all pristine lawns and architectural perfection that spoke of wealth Hunter could barely comprehend. He parked near the pool house, grabbed his toolbox, and walked toward the Olympic-sized swimming pool that shimmered in the afternoon sunlight. The property appeared deserted. No gardeners, no staff, no sounds except for the gentle hum of expensive outdoor speakers, playing classical music somewhere in the distance. Hunter assumed the homeowner was away, which was fine by him. He preferred working alone, getting the job done without small talk or awkward interactions with people who lived in a completely different universe than his own. But as he approached the pool, something caught his eye. A dark shape beneath the water's surface. At first, Hunter thought it might be a pool cover or some kind of debris, but then he noticed the fabric moving gently with the current created by the filtration jets. His heart stopped. That wasn't debris. That was a person. Without a single second of hesitation, Hunter dropped his toolbox and sprinted the remaining distance to the pool's edge. The woman was floating face down, her long dark hair fanning out around her head like seaweed, her arms motionless at her sides. She wore what looked like an expensive black dress that had become waterlogged and heavy. Hunter's military training kicked in instantly, overriding the shock and horror flooding his system. He didn't think. He didn't pause. He simply acted. He dove into the water fully clothed, his work boots and jeans immediately becoming anchors, trying to drag him down. The pool was deep, at least 9 feet in this section, and Hunter had to fight against his own clothing to reach her. When his hands finally closed around her shoulders, he felt the dead weight of unconsciousness. She wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. Panic tried to claw its way into his chest, but Hunter shoved it down. He had been trained for crisis situations. He knew what to do. With powerful strokes, he hauled her toward the shallow end, his muscles burning from the effort of moving 2 bodies through water while wearing heavy, waterlogged clothing. When he finally reached the pool steps, he lifted her out with strength born from pure adrenaline and desperation. Her head lolled backward, her skin pale with a bluish tint that made Hunter's stomach drop. He laid her carefully on the warm concrete pool deck, immediately checking for breathing and a pulse. Nothing. No rise and fall of her chest. No flutter of life beneath his fingertips pressed to her neck. Hunter positioned himself over her and began CPR, his hands interlaced over her sternum, pressing down in steady rhythmic compressions. He counted aloud, his voice steady despite the terror coursing through him. 30 compressions. He tilted her head back, pinched her nose and delivered 2 rescue breaths. Her chest rose and fell with the air he pushed into her lungs, but she still didn't respond. Again, 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Hunter's arms ached. Water dripped from his hair into his eyes, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. This woman, whoever she was, deserved to live. She deserved another chance. "Come on," Hunter muttered between compressions. "Come on, stay with me. Breathe." 30 compressions, 2 breaths. He had lost track of how many cycles he had completed when suddenly, miraculously, the woman's body convulsed. She coughed violently, water spewing from her mouth as her lungs fought to expel the liquid and draw in precious air. Hunter immediately turned her onto her side, supporting her as she continued to cough and gasp, her whole body trembling. "You're okay," Hunter said, his voice shaking with relief. "You're breathing. You're going to be okay." The woman's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. She looked at Hunter without recognition, without understanding, her lips moving soundlessly as she tried to process what had happened. Hunter grabbed his phone from his soaked pocket, praying it still worked. By some miracle, the screen lit up. He dialed emergency services immediately. "This is Hunter Tate. I'm at the Willowbrook Estate on Preston Canyon Road. I just pulled a woman from the pool. She wasn't breathing, but I performed CPR, and she's responsive now. We need an ambulance." Immediately, the operator's calm voice asked questions. Was she breathing on her own? Yes. Was she conscious? Partially. Hunter answered everything while keeping one hand on the woman's shoulder, making sure she stayed on her side, monitoring every breath she took. She was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. The woman's eyes finally focused on Hunter's face. She stared at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Confusion, certainly, but also something else. Something that looked almost like wonder. Her lips moved again, and this time, sound emerged. A whisper so faint Hunter had to lean closer to hear it. "You saved me." Hunter shook his head, uncomfortable with the weight of those words. "The paramedics are on their way. Just stay still. Don't try to move yet." But the woman continued to stare at him with those intense, searching eyes. Even in her vulnerable state, soaked and trembling on the pool deck, there was something powerful about her presence. Something that made Hunter feel like he was being seen in a way he hadn't been seen in years. The sound of sirens grew louder in the distance. Hunter stayed beside her, talking quietly, keeping her calm and alert until the paramedics arrived and took over. They asked Hunter what happened, and he explained quickly and efficiently. They praised his quick thinking, his CPR technique, his composure under pressure. Hunter barely heard them. He was watching the woman as they loaded her onto a stretcher, wrapping her in thermal blankets, checking her vital signs. Just before they wheeled her toward the ambulance, she turned her head and locked eyes with Hunter one more time. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't hear over the commotion, but he saw the gratitude there. The profound, overwhelming gratitude. Then she was gone, loaded into the ambulance and rushed away with sirens wailing. Hunter stood alone beside the pool, dripping wet, shaking from adrenaline crash, staring at the space where she had been. He didn't even know her name. He assumed he never would. In his experience, the wealthy lived in their world, and people like him lived in theirs. Their paths crossed only briefly, only when necessity demanded it. Hunter gathered his toolbox, left a note about the pool filter issue with his contact information for the estate manager, and drove home in his soaked clothes. He thought that would be the end of it. Just another emergency, another crisis averted, another day in a life that had taught him to expect nothing and hope for even less. He had no idea that everything was about to change. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Hunter Tate's apartment was a modest two-bedroom unit in the Maplewood Gardens complex, a working-class neighborhood on the opposite side of Ashford Heights from estates like Willowbrook. The paint was chipping on the exterior walls, the parking lot had more potholes than pavement, and the sound of the nearby highway provided constant white noise through thin windows. But it was home. More importantly, it was affordable on the inconsistent income Hunter scraped together from his handyman and contracting work. The transition from military service to civilian life had been harder than Hunter ever anticipated. He had served with distinction, earned commendations, learned skills that were supposed to translate into stable employment. But the reality was far messier than the recruitment promises. The discipline and structure that made him an excellent service member didn't automatically translate into corporate success. The nightmares and hypervigilance that came home with him didn't help either. Still, Hunter might have managed. He might have found his footing eventually. But then Sarah got sick. His wife's diagnosis came just 18 months after his discharge. Aggressive, fast-moving, the kind of diagnosis that came with timelines measured in months, not years. Hunter had watched the strongest woman he had ever known fade away despite every treatment, every prayer, every desperate hope. She died on a Tuesday morning in spring, leaving Hunter alone with their 6-year-old son, Jamie. That was 4 years ago. 4 years of Hunter rebuilding a life from rubble, of learning to be both mother and father to a boy who asked heartbreaking questions about why mommy wasn't coming back. 4 years of working multiple jobs, of choosing between fixing the car or buying Jamie new shoes, of lying awake at night wondering if he was doing enough, being enough. The morning after pulling the woman from the pool, Hunter woke at 5:30. As usual, his body ached from the physical exertion and adrenaline crash of the previous day. His work clothes were still damp, hanging over the shower rod. He had managed to salvage his phone, but his boots were probably ruined. Another expense he couldn't really afford. He made coffee in the kitchen while mentally calculating his finances. The Willowbrook job had been an emergency call, which meant premium rates. That money would help cover Jamie's upcoming school field trip and maybe, just maybe, allow Hunter to fix the check engine light that had been glowing in his van for 3 weeks. Every dollar had a destination before it even hit his account. At 6:15, Hunter knocked gently on Jamie's bedroom door before opening it. His son was still asleep, curled up under blankets covered in dinosaurs, his dark hair messy against the pillow. Hunter's chest tightened with the fierce, overwhelming love that hit him every single morning. This boy was his entire world. Every sacrifice, every struggle, every moment of bone-deep exhaustion was worth it for Jamie. "Hey buddy," Hunter said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Time to wake up." Jamie groaned and burrowed deeper into his blankets, which made Hunter smile. The kid was not a morning person, a trait he definitely inherited from Sarah. Hunter gave him a gentle shake. "Come on, we've got blueberry pancakes if you get up now." That did the trick. Jamie's eyes opened, still heavy with sleep but interested. "Really? Really?" Hunter confirmed. "But only if you're dressed and at the table in 10 minutes. Jamie scrambled out of bed, suddenly full of energy. Hunter headed back to the kitchen and started mixing pancake batter from scratch. It was cheaper than the boxed stuff, and he had gotten pretty good at it over the years. Sarah had been the cook in the family, but Hunter had learned out of necessity. He had learned a lot of things out of necessity. They ate breakfast together at the small kitchen table, Jamie chattering about an upcoming science project while Hunter listened and asked questions. These morning moments were sacred to Hunter. No matter how exhausted he was, no matter how worried about money or work or the future, he never rushed these breakfasts. Jamie deserved a father who was present, who paid attention, who made him feel valued and heard. After breakfast, Hunter packed Jamie's lunch, made sure his homework was in his backpack, and walked him to the bus stop 2 blocks away. Other parents were there, mostly mothers who gave Hunter polite smiles, but rarely engaged in conversation. Hunter didn't mind. He wasn't looking for community or connection. He was just trying to survive each day and give Jamie the best life possible. The school bus arrived right on time. Hunter ruffled Jamie's hair, reminded him to listen to his teacher, and watched the bus pull away. Then he walked back to the apartment alone, the silence settling around him like a familiar weight. Hunter spent the rest of the morning fixing a leaking faucet for Mrs. Chun in the apartment below his, refusing payment because she was elderly and on a fixed income. Then he drove across town to install new cabinet hardware for the Richardsons, a job that paid decent money but required patience as Mrs. Richardson changed her mind 3 times about placement. Hunter remained calm and professional throughout, even as his back ached and his mind drifted to the woman in the pool. He wondered if she was okay, if she had recovered fully, if she even remembered what happened, or if the oxygen deprivation had created gaps in her memory. He hoped she was surrounded by family and friends, getting the care and support she needed. Then he pushed the thoughts away. It wasn't his business. He had done what any decent person would do. That was enough. By the time Hunter picked Jamie up from school that afternoon, he had almost convinced himself that the Willowbrook incident was behind him. Just another day, another emergency, already fading into the collection of experiences that made up his complicated life. He had no idea that at that exact moment, a team of private investigators was compiling a comprehensive report about Hunter Tate, his background, his service record, his family situation, his current employment. Every detail of his life being examined by people he had never met, on orders from the woman whose life he had saved. Hunter Tate was about to discover that some actions, no matter how selfless or unremarkable they seem in the moment, create ripples that change everything. And the wave heading toward his ordinary life was about to crash with a force that would sweep away every assumption he had about his place in the world. Judge Judy stood up from her chair. She walked down from the bench, something she rarely did during proceedings. The cameras followed her every movement as she approached Tristan's podium. "Mr. Boyd," she said, her voice controlled but intense. "I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. And I need the complete truth." Tristan nodded. He closed the sketchpad for a moment, gathering himself. Then he began. "My mother and I moved into Mr. Malone's building 11 months ago. She'd just gotten a job as a medical assistant at a clinic in Sherman Oaks. We needed a place close to her work. Mr. Malone's building was affordable. The apartment was small but clean. It seemed perfect." Judge Judy listened, her arms crossed. "Mom worked long shifts, sometimes 12, 14 hours. I'm homeschooled, so I was in the apartment a lot by myself, studying, drawing, just living my life." Tristan's voice wavered. "About 2 months after we moved in, I started noticing weird things, small things, like items in my room would be moved slightly. Or I'd come home and feel like someone had been there, but I couldn't prove anything." "Did you tell your mother?" Judge Judy asked. "I tried. But she was so stressed about money, about keeping her job, about making rent. I didn't want to add to her worries. So I told myself I was being paranoid." Victor Malone shifted uncomfortably at his podium. His lawyer, who'd been silent until now, leaned over to whisper something, but Victor waved him away. Tristan continued. "Then, about 6 months ago, my mom started getting strange messages, anonymous texts, emails from accounts that didn't have real names. They knew things about her, personal things. Things she'd only talked about inside our apartment. What she was worried about, what she was planning. Private conversations we'd had." Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. "What kind of things?" "Medical things, Your Honor. Mom had been diagnosed with a condition. Nothing life-threatening, but private, personal, and these messages referenced it. They knew details that only she and I had. Discussed, in our living room, with the door locked. The courtroom was absolutely still. Everyone understood what this meant. Someone had been listening, watching, violating the most basic privacy two people should have in their own home. My mom started falling apart, Tristan said, his voice thick with emotion now. She became paranoid, anxious. She couldn't sleep. She thought someone at work was leaking her information. She thought maybe her phone was hacked. She never suspected. The apartment itself, how could she? Who would think their landlord would do something like that? So what happened 3 months ago? Judge Judy asked gently. Tristan took a shaky breath. She broke. Completely. The messages got worse. More threatening. They started suggesting things about me, about my safety. Saying that if she didn't do certain things, something bad might happen to her son. She was terrified. She couldn't think straight anymore. He opened the sketchpad again, flipping to a page that showed a woman's face. Valerie Kim. The drawing captured her exhaustion, her fear, her desperation. One night she told me she had to leave. That it wasn't safe for her to stay. That whoever was targeting her might hurt me to get to her. I begged her to go to the police. But she said they wouldn't believe her. She said she had no proof, no evidence, just paranoia and fear. And she left you alone? Judge Judy's tone was carefully neutral. She didn't want to, Your Honor. She thought she was protecting me. She thought if she disappeared, whoever was tormenting her would follow her and leave me alone. She left me money. Enough for a few months of rent and food. She told me to stay in the apartment, finish my schooling online, and she'd come back. When it was safe, Tristan's hands were shaking now. But I knew something was wrong. Really wrong. So the next day, I started looking, really looking. And that's when I found the first camera. Judge Judy turned to face Victor Malone. Mr. Malone, you've been very quiet during all of this. Victor's face was red, his jaw tight. Because it's all nonsense, Your Honor. This young man and his mother are clearly unstable. I'm the victim here. I have an apartment that's been destroyed and rent that hasn't been paid. We'll get to that, Judge Judy said coldly. She turned back to Tristan. What happened after you found the cameras? I realized everything, Tristan said. The messages my mom received. The things they knew. It all made sense. Mr. Malone had been watching us, listening to us. He knew everything about our lives because he'd been surveilling us the entire time. But why? Judge Judy asked. Why would he target your mother specifically? Tristan flipped to another page. Another drawing. This one showed a document. A lease agreement. And highlighted in the drawing was a specific clause. Because my mother was exactly the kind of tenant he wanted. Single woman, working long hours. A teenage son at home alone most of the day, vulnerable, isolated, no family nearby, no support system. Judge Judy studied the drawing. What am I looking at? The lease agreement, Your Honor, standard lease. But there's a clause buried in the fine print. It says the landlord reserves the right to enter the premises for maintenance and safety inspections without prior notice. My mom signed it because she was desperate for a place to live. She didn't realize what it really meant. It gave him legal cover, Judge Judy said, understanding dawning. Exactly. He could claim he was just checking the property. But what he was really doing was installing surveillance equipment. And once it was in place, he had access to everything. Our conversations, our routines, our vulnerabilities. Tristan's voice hardened. He used that information to terrorize my mother. To drive her away, because once she was gone, I'd be alone. A minor living by himself, even more vulnerable. Even easier to control. Judge Judy's expression was pure fury now. And you stayed because I had nowhere else to go, Your Honor, and because I knew if I ran, he'd just do this to someone else. So I made a choice. I decided to document everything. To gather evidence the only way I knew how, through my drawings. He held up the sketch pad. I spent 3 months making holes in those walls, finding every camera, every microphone, sketching everything. Because I knew that eventually, someone would have to listen. Someone would have to see the truth. You put yourself at risk, Judge Judy said quietly. He could have hurt you. I know, but what else could I do? The police didn't. Believe me, I had no money for a lawyer. My mother was gone. I was 17 years old with a sketch pad and a camera I'd pulled out of my own bedroom wall. This lawsuit was my only chance. Judy turned to Victor Malone. Her eyes were ice. Mr. Malone, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I strongly suggest you think very carefully before you answer. Did you install surveillance equipment in the apartments you rent? Victor Malone's lawyer grabbed his arm. Don't answer that, Victor. We need to consult before. I don't care what your lawyer says, Judge Judy interrupted. Answer the question. The courtroom held its breath, and then Tristan said something that changed everything. Your Honor, he doesn't need to answer. Because I have proof that doesn't require his confession. He flipped to the very last page of the sketchpad. The call came on Thursday afternoon. Well, Hunter was replacing a broken garbage disposal for the Hendersons on the east side of town. His phone buzzed in his pocket, displaying an unknown number with a local area code. Hunter almost ignored it, assuming it was another spam call about his car's extended warranty or some other scam. But something made him wipe his greasy hands. On his work jeans, an answer. Hunter Tate, he said, tucking the phone between his shoulder and ear while reaching for a wrench. Mr. Tate, this is Catherine Morrison from Willowbrook Estate Management, a professional female voice replied. I'm calling regarding the incident that occurred at the property on Tuesday. Hunter's hand froze. He straightened up, giving them call his full attention. Yes, is everything all right? Is the woman okay? She's recovering well, thanks to your quick actions, Catherine said warmly. The owner of the estate wanted me to reach out personally to express her gratitude. She also wanted to ensure you were compensated for the pool filter repair you were originally called to complete. That's not necessary, Hunter said quickly. I'm just glad she's okay. The repair can wait, Mr. Tate, the owner insists. In fact, she'd like to thank you in person if you're available. Would you be willing to return to the estate tomorrow afternoon? Say around 2 o'clock, Hunter hesitated. Something about the formality of the request felt strange, almost rehearsed. But he supposed people with money operated differently. Maybe this was just how they handled things in their world. Besides, he could use the payment for the repair work, even if accepting thanks in person felt awkward. Sure, Hunter agreed. 2 o'clock tomorrow works. Excellent. The gates will be open for you. Just proceed directly to the main house this time, not the pool area. Someone will meet you at the front entrance. After hanging up, Hunter returned to the garbage disposal repair, but his mind wandered. He kept thinking about the woman he had pulled from the pool. In the chaos and adrenaline of the moment, he hadn't really looked at her face, hadn't registered details beyond her desperate need for help. He wondered who she was, what had happened, why she had been alone at such a massive estate. Had she slipped and fallen? Had she been swimming and experienced a medical emergency? The questions circled through his mind without answers. That evening, after putting Jamie to bed, Hunter sat at his small kitchen table with a cup of coffee and thought about the strangeness of life. 4 years ago, he had been drowning in his own way, suffocating under the weight of grief and responsibility and fear. He had felt like he was going under, like the current was too strong and he would never reach the surface again. But somehow, day by day, stroke by stroke, he had kept moving forward. For Jamie, always for Jamie. And now, randomly, unexpectedly, He had literally saved someone from drowning. Hunter didn't believe in fate or divine plans or cosmic meaning. Life had taught him that chaos was more common than order, that tragedy struck without reason, and that survival required nothing more mystical than stubborn persistence. But still, there was something about pulling that woman from the water that felt significant in a way he couldn't quite articulate. As if, for one brief moment, his life had intersected with purpose, larger than just getting through another day. Before we continue with what happened when Hunter returned to Willowbrook Estate, if you believe that one selfless act can change everything, show your support by hitting that like button right now. Drop a comment below and tell us about a time when someone's kindness made a difference in your life. And don't forget to subscribe to Triumphant Stories and turn on notifications, because what happens next proves that heroes walk among us every single day, and their courage deserves to be celebrated. Trust me, you won't want to miss where this story goes next. The next afternoon, Hunter arrived at Willowbrook Estate exactly at 2 o'clock. He had debated what to wear, finally settling on his cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt that wasn't too wrinkled. He felt ridiculous caring about his appearance, but something about the formality of the invitation made him want to look at least somewhat presentable. The iron gates opened automatically as he approached, just as they had on Tuesday. But this time, instead of heading toward the pool area, Hunter followed the curved driveway to the front of the main house. And what a house it was! Hunter had seen it from a distance during the emergency, but up close, the architecture was even more impressive. It was a modern masterpiece of glass and stone, all clean lines and expensive materials, probably worth more than Hunter would earn in 10 lifetimes. A woman in professional business attire waited at the massive front door. She smiled warmly as Hunter parked his van and walked toward her. "Mr. Tate, welcome. I'm Catherine Morrison. We spoke on the phone. Thank you so much for coming." "Of course," Hunter replied, shaking her extended hand. "How is she doing?" "The woman from the pool?" Catherine's smile grew even warmer, though something flickered in her eyes that Hunter couldn't quite read. "Why? Don't you come inside and ask her yourself?" Hunter followed Catherine through an entrance hall that looked like something from an architecture magazine. High ceilings, original artwork on the walls, furniture that was probably worth more than his entire apartment's contents combined. His work boots felt too loud against the polished floors. He tried to walk carefully, hyper-aware of not touching anything or leaving scuff marks. Catherine led him through several rooms, before arriving at what appeared to be a private study or office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the pool where Hunter had performed CPR just days earlier. Behind an elegant desk made of dark wood sat the woman he had saved, but she looked completely different from the half-drowned, unconscious person he remembered. She was composed, professional, radiating the kind of quiet authority that came from years of wielding power. She wore a cream-colored blouse, and her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek style. When she looked up and her eyes met Hunter's, recognition and something deeper passed between them. "Mr. Tate," she said, standing and walking around the desk. "I'm Ella White. I believe we've met before, though the circumstances were less than ideal." Hunter's mouth went dry. Ella White. The name was familiar, though he couldn't immediately place why. "I'm glad to see you're okay," he managed. "You gave me quite a scare." "A scare?" "I gave myself quite a scare," Ella replied with a slight smile. "I'm told I wasn't breathing when you pulled me out. That you performed CPR for several minutes before I responded." "Training," Hunter said simply. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Ella said firmly. "Not anyone. Most people would have panicked, called for help and waited, or not known what to do. You acted immediately and decisively. You saved my life, Mr. Tate, and I wanted to thank you properly." Hunter stood in Ella White's study feeling completely out of place, like a smudge on an otherwise perfect painting. The woman before him exuded elegance and confidence, every inch of her presence carefully cultivated over years of operating in a world he could barely imagine. Yet when she looked at him, there was something vulnerable in her eyes, something raw that reminded him of those desperate moments beside the pool when she had gasped back to life in his arms. "I appreciate you saying that," Hunter said carefully. "But honestly, I was just doing what anyone with basic training would do. I'm glad I was there at the right time." Ella studied him with an intensity that made Hunter uncomfortable. It wasn't hostile or judgmental, but rather deeply curious, as if she was trying to understand something about him that even he didn't fully grasp about himself. "May I ask you something personal, Mr. Tate?" Ella gestured toward two leather chairs, positioned near the windows. "Please sit." Hunter sat awkwardly, his work-worn jeans contrasting sharply with the expensive furniture. Ella settled into the chair across from him with practiced grace. "Catherine mentioned you're a contractor, and handyman," Ella continued. "Is that what you've always done?" Hunter shook his head. "No, I served in the military for 8 years before transitioning to civilian work. The handyman business is more recent, just the last few years. And you have a son, correct?" Hunter's protective instincts flared immediately. "Yes, Jamie, he's 10. Why are you asking about my family?" Lulu raised her hands in a peaceful gesture. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to pry. It's just that when someone saves your life, you become curious about who they are. What kind of person risks themselves without hesitation for a complete stranger?" Hunter relaxed slightly but remained guarded. "I have training in emergency response. When I saw you in the pool, I didn't think about it. I just acted. That's what the training does. It overrides fear and doubt." "But training doesn't create character," Ella countered gently. "Training provides skills, but choosing to use those skills, especially when there's risk involved, that comes from something deeper." Hunter didn't know how to respond to that. He had never thought of himself as particularly brave or noble. He was just a guy trying to get through life, trying to raise his son right, trying to keep his head above water financially and emotionally. The fact that he had pulled someone from an actual pool felt almost ironic, given how often he felt like he was drowning in his own circumstances. "Mr. Tate," Ella said, leaning forward slightly, her expression sincere, "I want to compensate you for what you did. Not just for the pool repair, but for saving my life. Please, name an amount." Hunter's jaw tightened. This was exactly what he had feared, what had made him uncomfortable about coming here in the first place. "I don't want your money," he said firmly. "I didn't save you for a reward. I saved you because it was the right thing to do." "I understand that," Ella replied, "but surely you could use financial help." Catherine's background research indicated, "You're a single father working multiple jobs. Let me ease some of that burden." Hunter stood abruptly, anger flashing through him. "You had someone research me? Investigate my life?" Lela remained seated, but her expression showed genuine remorse. "I'm sorry, that was invasive. But please understand, I needed to know who you were. After what happened, I couldn't just let you disappear. You saved my life, Mr. Tate. That creates a connection whether we want it or not." Hunter paced to the windows, staring out at the pool where everything had happened. His emotions were tangled, a mess of pride, anger, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite name. Part of him wanted to walk out, to return to his simple life, and forget this entire uncomfortable encounter. But another part, a part he had buried deep after Sarah died, was responding to Ella White in ways that terrified him. "Why were you alone?" Hunter asked suddenly, turning back to face her. "A place like this must have staff, security, other people around. How did you end up in that pool with no one to help you?" Eula's composure cracked slightly. "I had given the staff the day off. I wanted solitude, time to think without interruption. I decided to swim, to clear my head. I must have had some kind of medical episode. I don't remember falling in or struggling." One moment I was standing at the edge, and the next, I was waking up on the deck with you looking down at me. Have the doctors figured out what happened? Vasovagal syncope, Ella explained. A sudden drop in heart rate and blood pressure that caused me to faint. Stress-related, they think. Apparently, I've been pushing myself too hard for too long. Hunter could relate to that more than she knew. You need to take better care of yourself. I'm learning that lesson, Ella said with a wry smile. Nearly. Dying has a way of reorganizing your priorities. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Hunter knew he should leave, should return to his real life, and let this strange woman return to hers. Their worlds had collided by accident, by emergency, but that didn't mean they were meant to stay connected. Yet he found himself reluctant to walk away, drawn to her in ways that made no logical sense. I really do need to get going, Hunter finally said. I have to pick up my son from school soon. Ella stood as well, and for a moment they simply looked at each other across the expensive carpet. Two people from completely different universes who had shared an extraordinary moment neither would forget. Would you allow me to at least pay you for the pool repair you were originally called to do? Ella asked. Hunter nodded. That felt fair, professional, not like charity or gratitude payment. The filter motor needs replacing. Parts and labor would run about $400. Catherine will process that payment today, Ella assured him. Then she hesitated, vulnerability flickering across her features again. Mr. Tate, Hunter, would it be completely inappropriate if I asked to see you again? Not for business, just to talk. Every rational part of Hunter's brain screamed at him to say no, to maintain boundaries, to protect himself and Jamie from complications they didn't need. But the part of him that had been lonely for 4 years, the part that had forgotten what it felt like to connect with another adult on any meaningful level, that part whispered something different. I don't think that's a good idea, Hunter said, even as his heart argued otherwise. We live in very different worlds, Ms. White. Lela, she corrected softly. And different worlds can still intersect. They already have. Hunter walked toward the door, every step feeling heavier than the last. Take care of yourself, Ella, and maybe get a pool alarm installed. He thought he heard her laugh softly as Catherine appeared to escort him out. As Hunter drove away from Willowbrook Estate, he watched the massive house shrink in his rearview mirror and told himself firmly that this chapter was closed. He had done a good thing, saved a life, and now it was over. He would take the payment. For the repair work, maybe treat Jamie to pizza, and forget about the beautiful, mysterious woman who had looked at him like he was someone worth knowing. But forgetting Ella White would prove far more difficult than Hunter could have possibly imagined. Because while he was driving away convincing himself their story was over, Ella was standing at her window watching his beat-up van disappear, already making plans that would change both their lives forever. The following Tuesday morning started like any other for Hunter. He woke before dawn, made coffee, prepared Jamie's lunch, and went through the familiar routine that had become the backbone of his existence. Jamie was in good spirits, chattering about an upcoming science fair project involving volcanoes. Hunter listened and nodded, offering suggestions while mentally reviewing his work schedule for the day. He had 3 jobs lined up, all small repairs that would hopefully add up to enough to cover groceries and gas for the week. After dropping Jamie at the bus stop, Hunter returned to the apartment to find something unexpected waiting in the building's small lobby. A deliveryman stood holding an enormous bouquet of flowers, so large it nearly obscured his face. Delivery for Hunter Tate, the man announced. Hunter frowned. That must be a mistake. I didn't order any flowers. You Hunter Tate? Yes, but I'm telling you, there's been a mix-up. The deliveryman checked his tablet. Says right here, Hunter Tate, apartment 2B, Maplewood Gardens. Someone paid extra for early morning delivery. He thrust the arrangement toward Hunter. Sign here. Bewildered, Hunter signed the digital pad and accepted the flowers. They were beautiful, clearly expensive, arranged with the kind of professional artistry that spoke of a high-end florist. Tucked among the blooms was a small card in a cream-colored envelope. Hunter unlocked his apartment, set the massive arrangement on his kitchen counter, and opened the card. The handwriting was elegant, flowing, unmistakably feminine. "Thank you again for giving me a second chance at life. I hope these brighten your day even a fraction as much as you brighten mine. With gratitude, Ella." Hunter stared at the card, emotions warring inside him. Part of him was touched by the gesture, by the thoughtfulness of it. But another part felt uncomfortable, as if accepting flowers from Ella White was crossing some invisible line he had drawn to protect himself. He had meant what he said about their worlds being too different. Getting involved, even in a friendship capacity, seemed like inviting complications he couldn't afford. He tucked the card in a drawer and headed out for his first job of the day, trying to push thoughts of Ella from his mind. But Ella, it seemed, was not easily forgotten. 2 days later, Hunter arrived home from work to find a package waiting outside his apartment door. It was wrapped in brown paper with his name written on it in that same elegant handwriting. Inside, he found a children's book about dinosaurs, clearly expensive and beautifully illustrated, with a note attached. "Catherine mentioned your son loves dinosaurs. I saw this at a bookstore and thought of him. I hope it's not too forward, Ella." Hunter held the book, conflicted. It was a thoughtful gift, clearly chosen with care, not just grabbed randomly from a shelf. The fact that Ella had remembered the small detail about Jamie's interests, had thought about his son at all, created a warmth in Hunter's chest that he hadn't felt in years. That evening, when Jamie discovered the book, his face lit up with pure joy. "Dad, this is amazing. Look at the T-Rex. And the Triceratops has all the right details." Watching his son's happiness, Hunter couldn't bring himself to regret accepting the gift, even if it complicated things in his own mind. The pattern continued over the next 2 weeks. A tin of expensive cookies appeared with a note about hoping Hunter would enjoy something sweet. A gift card to a local family restaurant materialized with a message suggesting Hunter and Jamie deserved a night off from cooking. Each gesture was thoughtful, never ostentatious, never crossing into inappropriate territory, but steadily building a connection that Hunter found increasingly difficult to resist. Then, on a Saturday afternoon 3 weeks after pulling Ella from the pool, Hunter opened his door to find her standing in the hallway of his building. She looked different than she had in her study at Willowbrook Estate. She wore jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair down around her shoulders, minimal makeup. She looked nervous, almost shy, holding a paper bag that smelled deliciously of fresh bagels. "Hi," Ella said, her smile tentative. "I know I should have called first, but I was afraid you'd say no. I brought breakfast, and an apology for being so persistent." Hunter stood in his doorway, completely blindsided. In the background, he could hear Jamie playing video games in his room. The apartment was a mess, toys scattered across the floor, dishes in the sink, all the evidence of their modest, chaotic life on full display. "Ella, what are you doing here?" Hunter asked, not unkindly, but with genuine confusion. "Being brave," she replied. "Something you inspired me to be." Before Hunter could respond, Jamie appeared behind him, curious about the visitor. "Dad, who's that?" Ella's eyes went to Jamie, and her expression softened with such genuine warmth that Hunter felt something shift inside him. "Hi there," she said to Jamie. "I'm Ella. You must be the dinosaur expert your dad told me about." Jamie's eyes widened. "You know about dinosaurs?" "I'm learning," Ella admitted. "Maybe you could teach me some things?" And just like that, with simple kindness and authentic interest, Ella White stepped into Hunter Tate's world in a way that would prove impossible to undo. Jamie, starved for adult attention beyond his father, lit up like a Christmas tree. launching into an enthusiastic explanation of different dinosaur species. Ella listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Jamie's jokes. Hunter watched the interaction, his defenses crumbling. He had been prepared to resist Ella's wealth, her status, her completely different lifestyle. But he hadn't been prepared for this, for her sitting cross-legged on his worn carpet, eating bagels with his son, fitting into their small world as if she had always belonged there. "I should have asked before coming," Ella said later, after Jamie had returned to his video game. She and Hunter stood in the small kitchen, speaking quietly. "But I couldn't stop thinking about you. About that day. About how you didn't hesitate, didn't calculate the risk, just acted because someone needed help." Hunter began, but she held up a hand. "I know what you're going to say. Different worlds, complications, all very logical and reasonable. But Hunter, I've spent my entire life being logical and reasonable. I've built companies, managed billions of dollars, made decisions that affected thousands of people. And none of it, not one single accomplishment, made me feel as alive as I felt when you breathed life back into me beside that pool." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm not asking for anything complicated. I just want to know you. To spend time with you and Jamie. To figure out if what I'm feeling is gratitude or something more. Can you give me that chance?" Hunter looked at this powerful, successful woman standing in his humble kitchen, looking at him like he was someone extraordinary rather than just a struggling single dad trying to survive. Every logical reason to say no was still valid. Still true. But standing there, hearing the hope in her voice, seeing the vulnerability she was brave enough to show, Hunter found he couldn't say the word. "One step at a time," he finally said. "No expectations, no pressure, just seeing where things go." The smile that broke across Ella's face was worth every risk, every potential complication, every fear Hunter still carried. In that moment, standing in his small kitchen with sunlight filtering through cheap blinds, something began that neither of them fully understood, but both were willing to explore. Sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with the smallest steps forward, with the courage to say yes when every logical reason screams no. And for Hunter Tate and Ella White, this was only the beginning. The weeks that followed Ella's unexpected appearance at Hunter's apartment unfolded with a naturalness that surprised them both. What started as cautious coffee meetings in neutral cafes evolved into regular Saturday morning breakfasts at Hunter's place, with Ella arriving with fresh pastries and Jamie greeting her with increasing enthusiasm. She never arrived empty-handed, but her gifts were thoughtful rather than extravagant, chosen with obvious care for their recipients rather than their price tags. Hunter found himself looking forward to these visits with an anticipation he hadn't felt in years. Ella had a way of making even mundane moments feel special. She listened when Jamie explained his latest school project with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she was actually paying attention. She helped Hunter fix a leaking pipe under the kitchen sink, laughing when she got sprayed with water, not caring that her expensive jeans got soaked. She sat on the floor playing board games with Jamie, competitive and playful in equal measure. What struck Hunter most was how Ella never flaunted her wealth or made him feel inadequate about his modest circumstances. She ate microwave popcorn during movie nights without complaint. She wore the same casual clothes multiple times, clearly comfortable in jeans and sweaters rather than designer outfits. She asked Hunter's opinion on decisions, valued his perspective, treated him as an equal in ways that slowly eroded his defensive walls. One afternoon in early November, Ella invited Hunter and Jamie to visit a local science museum. Hunter had always wanted to take Jamie, but the admission prices were beyond his budget. When Ella offered to cover the tickets, Hunter initially bristled with pride. But she handled it so gracefully, mentioning she had a membership that included guest passes, and they would be doing her a favor by using them before they expired. that Hunter found himself accepting. The day at the museum became one of Jamie's favorite memories. Ella was patient and engaged, reading every exhibit sign, participating in interactive displays, never once checking her phone or seeming bored. Hunter watched her crouch down to Jamie's level to examine a fossil exhibit, her face lit with genuine fascination, and felt something profound shift in his chest. This wasn't obligation or charity. Ella was choosing to be there, choosing to engage with his world, choosing them. During the planetarium show, sitting in the darkness with Jamie between them, Ella's hand somehow found Hunter's. The touch was electric, sending warmth up his arm. And straight to his heart. He didn't pull away. Neither did she. They sat like that through the entire presentation, their hands linked across Jamie's seat, a silent acknowledgement of something neither was quite ready to name aloud. After that day, the physical boundaries between them began to shift subtly. A hand on the shoulder when passing in the kitchen. Ella tucking a strand of hair behind her ear while Hunter talked, her eyes never leaving his face. Hunter finding excuses to stand closer when they cooked together. Small touches that felt monumental, loaded with possibility and restrained desire. The first time Ella stayed for dinner on a weeknight, Hunter cooked spaghetti with homemade sauce, a recipe Sarah had taught him years ago. He felt nervous presenting such a simple meal to someone who probably dined at five-star restaurants regularly. But Ella ate with obvious enjoyment, complimenting the flavors, asking about the recipe, making Hunter feel like a master chef rather than a struggling single dad heating jarred sauce with added spices. After dinner, while Jamie did homework at the kitchen table, Hunter and Ella washed dishes together. The domestic simplicity of the moment, the easy rhythm they had developed, felt more intimate than any fancy date could have been. Ella handed him plates to dry, their fingers brushing with each transfer, and Hunter realized with startling clarity that he was falling for her. Not for her money or status or the escape she might represent from his struggles, but for her. For the woman who laughed at Jamie's terrible jokes, who wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty, who looked at Hunter like he mattered. As November turned to December, Ella became a regular fixture in their lives. She attended Jamie's school winter concert, sitting beside Hunter in the crowded gymnasium, clapping enthusiastically for Jamie's brief recorder solo. She helped Hunter shop for Christmas presents, offering suggestions that fit his budget while making sure Jamie would love them. She invited them to a holiday light display at Ashford Botanical Gardens, a magical evening of illuminated paths and hot chocolate that Jamie talked about for weeks. Hunter's neighbors began to notice and comment. Mrs. Chun from downstairs made knowing remarks about the elegant woman who visited so regularly. The other parents at the bus stop gave Hunter curious looks, whispering among themselves. Hunter ignored it all, protective of what he and Ella were building, unwilling to define it or explain it to people who wouldn't understand. But as their connection deepened, so did Hunter's awareness of the vast differences in their circumstances. Ella never explicitly discussed her wealth, but context clues accumulated. A casual mention of a business trip to Singapore. A phone call about acquiring another hospital network. References to board meetings and shareholder expectations. Each reminder of her real life, the life she lived when she wasn't in his modest apartment, created a knot of anxiety in Hunter's stomach. One evening in mid-December, after Jamie had gone to bed, Hunter and Ella sat on the couch with cups of tea, talking quietly about nothing in particular. The small Christmas tree Hunter and Jamie had decorated stood in the corner, its colored lights casting a warm glow across the room. Holiday music played softly from Hunter's old stereo. The moment felt perfect, suspended in time, too good to be real. "What are you thinking?" Ella asked, noticing Hunter's distant expression. Hunter hesitated, then decided honesty was better. Then silence. "I'm thinking about how different our lives are. How you're sitting here in my tiny apartment, when you could be anywhere, doing anything." Willis set down her tea and turned to face him fully. "I'm exactly where I want to be, Hunter." "But for how long?" The question escaped before Hunter could stop it, revealing the fear he had been carrying. "Eventually you'll remember who you are, what your real life looks like. And this," he gestured around the small living room, "this won't be enough anymore." Lella's expression softened with understanding rather than offense. "Is that what you really think? That I'm slumming it, playing at normal life until I get bored?" "I don't know what to think," Hunter admitted. "I just know that women like you don't end up with guys like me." "Not in real life. Women like me," Ella repeated quietly. "What does that mean, Hunter? Women with money? Women with successful careers? Or women who've spent their entire lives being told their value comes from their bank account and their last name rather than who they actually are?" The raw pain in her voice surprised Hunter. He had been so focused on his own insecurities that he hadn't fully considered what Ella might be experiencing, what she might be seeking in their relationship. "I'm sorry," Hunter said. "That was unfair." "No, it's honest, and I appreciate honesty." Ella took his hand, her thumb tracing gentle circles on his palm. "But let me be honest too. I've dated men who saw dollar signs when they looked at me. Men who wanted access to my network, my influence, my resources. Men who performed interest in my thoughts and feelings, but were really just performing for what I could give them." She looked directly into Hunter's eyes. "You pulled me from a pool and saved my life without knowing who I was. You refused payment. You tried to keep distance between us specifically because of my wealth rather than pursuing me for it. You have no idea how extraordinary that is, how rare." "I'm not extraordinary," Hunter protested. "I'm just a regular guy trying to raise his son and keep a roof over our heads." "You're a man who risks his own safety to help strangers," Ella countered. "A father who puts his son's needs before his own comfort. A person who maintains his integrity, even when accepting help would make life easier. That's not ordinary, Hunter. That's exceptional." Hunter felt his throat tighten with emotion. He wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that what they were building could survive the reality of their different worlds. But fear was a powerful force, and he had spent 4 years building walls to protect himself and Jamie from more loss and disappointment. "I care about you," Hunter finally said, the words feeling both liberating and terrifying. "More than I've cared about anyone since Sarah died, and that scares me." Ella squeezed his hand. "It scares me too. But maybe being scared together is better than being safe and alone." They sat in comfortable silence after that, hands linked, both processing the vulnerability they had shared. Outside, snow began to fall, the first of the season, covering Ashford Heights in a blanket of white that made everything look clean and possible. Inside Hunter's small apartment, two people from impossibly different worlds continued the slow, careful process of building something neither fully understood, but both desperately wanted. Neither of them knew that in just a few days, the fragile connection they had built would face its greatest test. Because while Hunter was falling in love with Ella White the woman, he still had no real understanding of Ella White the billionaire, CEO, and that gap in understanding was about to be filled in a way that would shake the foundation of everything they had created. The revelation came on a Tuesday evening, sudden and unexpected, in the way that life-changing moments often do. Hunter was at home with Jamie, helping with math homework at the kitchen table, when his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number, but something made Hunter answer. "Mr. Tate, this is Richard Blackwell from Ashford Heights Chronicle," a male voice said. "I'm calling to get a comment from you regarding Ella White's announcement today." Hunter's stomach dropped. "What announcement?" There was a pause on the other end. "You haven't seen the news?" Ms. White held a press conference this afternoon, announcing a $50 million donation to establish the Tate Community Healthcare Initiative. "It's named after you, Mr. Tate. She credited you with saving her life and inspiring her to focus." More on accessible healthcare for underserved communities. The words hit Hunter like a physical blow. He stood abruptly from the table, his chair scraping against the floor. She did what? The press conference was broadcast live, the reporter continued. Ms. White spoke at length about her near-death experience and how your heroic actions without expectation of reward made her reevaluate her priorities. She announced the new initiative would provide free healthcare services to low-income families across the state. Sir, do you have any comment on being the inspiration for this program? Hunter's mind reeled. $50 million. A press conference. His name attached to a massive charitable initiative without his knowledge or consent. No comment, he managed, then hung up. With shaking hands, Hunter pulled up news websites on his phone. There it was, headline after headline. Billionaire CEO announces major healthcare initiative after near-death experience. Yellow White credits unknown hero for inspiring $50 million donation. Pool rescue leads to massive charitable program, and there were photos. Ella at a podium, looking professional and powerful in a tailored suit. Ella shaking hands with politicians and healthcare administrators. And worst of all, there was a photo of Hunter himself, clearly taken from social media or public records, displayed on screens behind Ella as she spoke. Jamie looked up from his homework, concerned. Dad, what's wrong? Nothing, buddy, Hunter lied, his voice strained. Just finish your math. I need to make a phone call. He stepped into his bedroom and called Ella's number with trembling fingers. She answered on the second ring. Hunter, she said warmly, I was just about to call you. Did you see the announcement? I wanted to tell you in person, but everything moved so quickly and I thought you'd be excited about the initiative. Excited? Hunter's voice came out harsher than he intended. Lala, you used my name, my story, without asking me. You put my face on screens at a press conference I knew nothing about. How could you think I'd be excited? Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, I thought you'd be honored. The initiative will help thousands of families like yours. Families struggling to afford basic health care. I thought you'd understand. I understand that you made a decision about my life without including me in it, Hunter said, anger and hurt mixing in his chest. I understand that you took something private, something personal, and turned it into a publicity opportunity. That's not fair, Ella protested. This isn't about publicity. This is about using my resources to make a real difference, inspired by your selflessness. My selflessness? Hunter laughed bitterly. I pulled you from a pool, Ella. I didn't ask to become the face of your charitable redemption arc. I didn't agree to have my privacy invaded and my name plastered across news sites. Hunter, please. Ella's voice cracked with emotion. I never meant to hurt you. I genuinely thought you'd be proud. The program will provide free healthcare to people who desperately need it. Then why not just do it without involving me? Hunter demanded. Why not create the program, announce it, help people without turning me into some kind of inspirational symbol? Unless that's what I've been all along, a good story. The humble handyman who saved the billionaire. Perfect for your image rehabilitation. How can you say that? Ella sounded genuinely wounded. After everything we've shared, all the time we've spent together, you think I've been using you? I don't know what to think anymore, Hunter said, exhausted. I thought I knew you. I thought we were building something real. But this reminds me that you live in a completely different world with completely different rules. A world where you can make unilateral decisions that affect other people's lives and expect them to just be grateful. Hunter, listen to me, Ella said urgently. I made a mistake. I see that now. I should have consulted you, should have asked permission before using your name. But please don't let this destroy what we have. Come to Willowbrook Estate tonight. Let me explain everything. Properly, face to face. Hunter looked through his bedroom door at Jamie, still working on homework at the kitchen table, blissfully unaware of how their lives had just been thrust into public view. He thought about reporters potentially showing up at their apartment, at Jamie's school, asking questions and taking photos. He thought about the careful, quiet life he had built being disrupted by forces beyond his control. "I need time to think," Hunter said finally. "Don't call me for a while. I need space to figure out if we can actually work. Hunter, please don't do this. Let me fix it." But Hunter had already hung up. He sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, feeling like he was drowning all over again. Only this time, there was no one to pull him to safety. That night, after putting Jamie to bed, Hunter sat in his darkened living room and did something he rarely allowed himself to do. He Googled Ella White and read everything he could find. Her net worth, estimated at over $3 billion. Her position as CEO of White Global Enterprises, a multinational corporation with interests in healthcare, real estate, and technology. Her reputation as a brilliant but demanding executive. Her previous relationships with other wealthy, influential people. Her presence on boards and committees that shaped policy and affected millions of lives. The woman described in these articles seemed like a stranger. Yes, there were mentions of her intelligence and business acumen, qualities Hunter had witnessed firsthand. But there was also a ruthlessness in how she operated, a willingness to make bold moves without extensive consultation, a pattern of prioritizing results over process. The Ella he thought he knew, the woman who sat on his floor playing games with Jamie, seemed incompatible with this corporate titan who wielded billions of dollars and influenced governments. Hunter's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages. Some from Ella, apologizing and pleading for a chance to explain. Others from unknown numbers, reporters requesting interviews. A few from acquaintances who had seen the news and wanted to know the full story. Hunter ignored them all. The hardest message to ignore came at nearly midnight from Ella. "I know I hurt you. I know I overstepped. But please believe me when I say that everything I feel for you is real. The initiative, the press conference, those were professional decisions I made poorly. But us, what we've been building, that's personal, and it matters more to me than any business venture. Give me a chance to make this right, please." Hunter read the message 3 times before setting his phone face down on the coffee table. He wanted to believe her. Wanted to trust that the connection they had developed was genuine and could survive this breach of trust. But doubt had taken root, and years of protecting himself and Jamie from disappointment made it hard to extend the vulnerability required for forgiveness. As the clock ticked past midnight and snow continued to fall outside, Hunter Tate faced an impossible choice. He could retreat to the safety of his small, predictable life, protecting himself and Jamie from the complications that came with loving someone from such a different world. Or he could take a leap of faith, trusting that the woman he had fallen for was real despite the wealth and power that surrounded her. Both options terrified him. Both carried risk. And the decision he made would determine not just his own future, but the course of 3 interconnected lives that had collided beside a pool on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon that had turned out to be anything but ordinary. The next morning, Hunter woke with a headache and a heart full of confusion. He had barely slept, his mind replaying the conversation with Ella and the revelations about her announcement on an endless loop. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face at that press conference, professional and polished, describing their story to strangers and cameras. The intimacy of what they had shared had been repackaged into a narrative designed for public consumption, and a violation of that felt profound. Jamie noticed something was wrong immediately. "Dad, you look tired. Are you sick?" "Just didn't sleep well, buddy," Hunter said, forcing a smile as he made breakfast. Nothing to worry about, but there was plenty to worry about. As Hunter scrolled through his phone while Jamie ate cereal, He found that the story had gained traction overnight. Local news outlets had picked it up. Social media was buzzing with the heartwarming tale of the heroic handyman and the grateful billionaire. Someone had even found photos of Hunter and Jamie at the Science Museum, snapped by other visitors, and posted online, now being shared with captions about the unnamed hero finally being revealed. Hunter felt violated all over again. His privacy, Jamie's privacy, had been stripped away without their consent. And while Ella's intention might have been noble, the execution had been thoughtless and damaging in ways she probably didn't even understand from her position of power and privilege. Mrs. Chun stopped Hunter in the hallway as he left to take Jamie to school. "I saw the news about you and that woman," she said, her expression concerned. "Be careful, Hunter. People with that much money, they don't think like regular folks. They're used to getting what they want." The warning echoed in Hunter's mind as he dropped Jamie at the bus stop. Other parents stared and whispered. One even approached to ask if he was really the guy from the news. Hunter deflected politely, but felt his chest tighten with anxiety. This was exactly what he had feared, the loss of anonymity and control over his own narrative. When Hunter returned to his apartment, he found Ella waiting in the parking lot, leaning against her sleek black car. She looked different than he had ever seen her, tired and uncertain, her usual confidence replaced with visible apprehension. "I know you asked for space," Ella said as Hunter approached, "but I couldn't stay away. Please, Hunter, just give me 10 minutes to explain." Hunter wanted to tell her to leave, to maintain his boundaries and protect his bruised feelings. But seeing her there, vulnerable and genuine, he found he couldn't turn her away completely. 10 minutes, he agreed, unlocking his apartment door. Inside, they stood in the living room, the space feeling different now, charged with tension rather than the comfortable ease they had developed. Ella wrung her hands, a nervous gesture Hunter had never seen from her before. "I'm sorry," she began. "I'm truly, deeply sorry for not consulting you before the announcement. You're right that I should have asked permission before using your name or sharing your story. That was wrong, and there's no excuse for it. Then why did you do it?" Hunter asked, his voice weary. Ella took a deep breath. "Because in my world, in my professional life, I'm used to making decisions quickly and decisively. I saw an opportunity to create something meaningful, something inspired by your selflessness, and I acted on it without thinking about how it would affect you personally. I compartmentalized, treating it as a business decision when I should have recognized it was deeply personal." "That's the problem, Ella," Hunter said, sitting heavily on the couch. "You have the power to make decisions that change people's lives, including mine, and you did it without even asking. That's not a partnership. That's not equality. That's you operating from a position of power I'll never have." "You're right," Ella admitted, sitting carefully on the other end of the couch. "And I understand if that's a deal breaker for you. But Hunter, I need you to understand something. My entire life people have valued me for what I can provide, what I can give them, what I can do for them. You're the first person in years who has valued me for who I am rather than what I have." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "When I thought about the healthcare initiative, I genuinely wanted to honor what you did for me. Not just saving my life, but showing me that kindness without expectation still exists. I wanted to create something that reflected your values. I see now that I went about it completely wrong, but the intention was pure. Pure." Hunter felt his anger beginning to crack, sympathy seeping through despite his hurt. "I believe your intention was good. But impact matters more than intention, Ella. And the impact is that my private life is now public. Reporters are calling me. People are staring at my son. I didn't sign up for that." "I know, and I'm going to fix it," Ella said urgently. "I've already contacted my PR team. We're issuing a statement requesting that media respect your privacy and remove your photos from circulation. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you and Jamie from unwanted attention." Can you really fix it? Hunter asked skeptically. Once something is out there, can you really put it back in the box? I can try, Ella said. I have resources and influence. I'll use every bit of it to shield you and Jamie, if you'll let me. They sat in silence for a long moment. Hunter wrestled with conflicting emotions, his heart and head engaged in fierce battle. He cared for Ella deeply, perhaps even loved her, but the revelation of how easily she could disrupt his life with her wealth and influence terrified him. I don't know if I can do this, Hunter finally said, his voice breaking. I don't know if I'm strong enough to be with someone whose world is so different from mine. Someone who can make decisions with consequences I can't control or escape. Lala moved closer, taking his hand gently. Then let me be strong enough for both of us while you figure it out. I'm not going anywhere, Hunter. I'll give you space if you need it, but I'm not walking away from what we have unless you explicitly tell me to. Hunter looked at their joined hands, remembering all the small moments they had shared. Ella laughing with Jamie, Ella helping with dishes, Ella sitting in the darkness of the planetarium, her fingers intertwined with his. Those moments had felt real, untouched by wealth or status or the complications of their different worlds. I need time, Hunter said quietly. Time to process this, to figure out if I can trust you with my heart and Jamie's well-being. Time to see if you can really understand what it means to be with someone who doesn't have the power or resources you have. Take all the time you need, Ella replied, squeezing his hand. I'll be here when you're ready. And Hunter, I promise you, I'm learning. This mistake taught me something crucial about how differently we experience the world. I won't make it again. After Ella left, Hunter sat alone in his apartment, feeling emotionally exhausted, but slightly less hopeless than before. She had listened, really listened, and acknowledged her mistakes without defensiveness. That meant something. But whether it meant enough to overcome the fundamental inequality in their circumstances remained an open question. The days that followed were difficult. Hunter threw himself into work, using physical labor to quiet his racing thoughts. Ella kept her distance but sent brief text messages letting him know she was thinking of him, never pressuring, always respectful of the space he had requested. True to her word, the media attention did die down as her PR team worked to redirect the narrative and protect Hunter's privacy. Jamie asked about Ella several times, confused about why she had stopped visiting. Hunter struggled to explain in age-appropriate terms that sometimes adults needed time to figure things out. He saw the disappointment in his son's eyes and felt the weight of that too. This wasn't just about him and Ella anymore. Jamie had gotten attached, had opened his heart to her presence in their lives. Whatever Hunter decided would affect his son as well. 2 weeks after their difficult conversation, Hunter sat in his apartment on a quiet Saturday morning, staring at his phone. Ella had sent a simple message the night before. I miss you. Both of you. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But I hope you decide to give us another chance. Hunter thought about Sarah, about the promises he had made at her funeral to protect their son and never let him be hurt again. He thought about the walls he had built around his heart to survive grief and hardship. And he thought about Ella, imperfect and powerful and learning to understand a world so different from her own. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is not save someone from drowning. Sometimes the bravest thing is to trust again after being hurt, to hope again after disappointment, to love again after loss. And as Hunter looked at Ella's message, at the vulnerability and patience she had shown, he felt something shift inside him. Maybe it was time to be brave one more time. Hunter called Ella that Saturday afternoon, his hand trembling slightly as he pressed her name in his contacts. She answered before the second ring, her voice tentative and hopeful. Hunter, can we talk? He asked. In person. Maybe tonight, after I put Jamie to bed? Yes, Ella said immediately. Yes, absolutely. Should I come to you, or would you prefer to meet somewhere neutral? Come here, Hunter decided. We started in my world, we should figure this out here too. That evening felt impossibly long. Hunter helped Jamie with homework, made dinner, played video games, all while his mind raced with what he wanted to say to Ella. He had spent 2 weeks thinking, processing, examining his fears and desires from every angle, and he had come to a conclusion that terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. After tucking Jamie into bed with an extra-long bedtime story, Hunter straightened up the living room and waited. Ella arrived at exactly 8:30, punctual as always. She wore jeans and a simple gray sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup. She looked beautiful and nervous, and so genuinely vulnerable that Hunter felt his carefully prepared speech evaporate. "Hi," Ella said softly, standing in the doorway. "Hi," Hunter replied. "Come in." They sat on the couch, a careful distance between them, the air heavy with unspoken words and fragile hope. Hunter noticed Ella's hands were shaking slightly, mirroring his own nervous energy. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Hunter began, then stopped, struggling to find the right words. "About us, about what happened, about whether this can work." Ella nodded, her eyes locked on his face with desperate attention. And I'm scared," Hunter admitted. "I'm terrified of getting hurt again, of opening my heart and having it broken. I'm terrified of Jamie getting attached and then losing someone he's come to care about. I'm terrified that no matter how much we want this to work, our different worlds will eventually pull us apart." He saw Ella's expression fall, pain flickering across her features, but he pressed on. "But I'm also terrified of letting fear win," Hunter continued, his voice gaining strength. "I'm terrified of looking back in 10 years and wondering what might have been if I had just been brave enough to try. Because the truth is, Ella, I've fallen for you. Not for your money or your status or what you can provide. I've fallen for the woman who sits on my floor playing board games with my son. The woman who laughs when she gets sprayed with water, fixing a pipe. The woman who listens like what I'm saying actually matters." Tears spilled down Ella's cheeks. "Hunter, I've fallen for you too. So completely that it scares me. You have no idea how much." "Then help me understand something," Hunter said, leaning forward. "Because I need to know if this is real, or if I'm just a project to you. Some kind of redemption story that makes you feel good about yourself." "You're not a project," Ella said fiercely, moving closer. "You're the first person in years who has made me feel like myself rather than my position or my bank account. Do you know what it's like to constantly wonder if people like you for who you are or what you can give them? To never be sure if affection is genuine or calculated." She took both his hands in hers, her grip tight with emotion. "You were willing to walk away from me specifically because of my wealth. You refused money, refused gifts, tried to maintain distance because you didn't want anything from me except the truth of who I am. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How precious? I don't want to be some symbol of purity in your life," Hunter protested. "Some noble poor person who validates your worth. That's not what you are," Ella insisted. "You're a man who has survived unimaginable loss and kept going for your son. A man who maintains his integrity even when it would be easier not to. A man who makes me laugh and challenges me and sees me as an equal, even though our bank accounts will never be equal." She released one of his hands to wipe tears from her face. "I made a terrible mistake with the press conference. I operated from a place of privilege without considering the impact on you. But I learned from it, Hunter. I'm learning from you every day about what really matters, about the difference between power and strength, about the value of a life measured in moments rather than dollars." Hunter felt his own eyes burning with unshed tears. "I want to believe you. God, I want to believe this can work." "Then believe it," Ella urged. "Not because it will be easy or perfect, but because we're both willing to try. I'll make mistakes." "Hunter, I'm sure of it. My privilege blinds me to things you experience every day. But I promise to listen when you tell me I've messed up. I promise to keep learning and adjusting and trying to understand your world better. And I'll try to. Trust you, Hunter said. To believe that you're here for the right reasons. To stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. But Ella, you need to understand something crucial. I can't change who I am or where I come from. I can't suddenly become comfortable in your world of galas and board meetings. This apartment, this life, this is real for me. I don't want you to change, Ella said passionately. This life, this apartment, this is more real than anything I've experienced in years. When I'm here with you and Jamie, I feel grounded in a way I never do at Willowbrook Estate or in boardrooms. You give me something I can't buy or achieve or acquire through any amount of success. What's that? Home, Ella whispered. You make me feel like I'm home. The simplicity and honesty of those words broke through the last of Hunter's defenses. He pulled Ella into his arms, holding her tightly as years of loneliness and fear finally cracked open. She clung to him just as desperately, her face buried in his shoulder, both of them trembling with the enormity of what they were choosing. I'm still scared, Hunter murmured into her hair. Me too, Ella replied. But let's be scared together. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms on Hunter's worn couch, Christmas lights twinkling on the small tree. In the corner, when they finally pulled apart, Hunter cupped Ella's face in his hands and looked directly into her eyes. We do this honestly, he said firmly. Complete honesty, even when it's hard. If something bothers me about your world, I tell you. If you don't understand something about mine, you ask. We figure this out together, as partners, not as rescuer and rescued, or wealthy benefactor and grateful recipient. Partners, Ella agreed, covering his hands with hers. Equals in everything that matters. And we protect Jamie, Hunter continued. No more public announcements, no media attention, no using our story for any purpose without both of us agreeing. He comes first, always. Always. Ella promised. I would never do anything to hurt him, Hunter. He's become so important to me. Hunter leaned forward and kissed her then, gentle and tentative at first, then deeper as years of loneliness and resistance melted away. Ella responded with equal intensity, her fingers threading through his hair, both of them pouring everything. They felt into that connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Hunter rested his forehead against hers. So we're really doing this? He asked. We're really doing this, Ella confirmed, smiling through her tears. It's going to be complicated, probably. We're going to have disagreements about money and lifestyle, and how to navigate our different worlds. Almost certainly. People are going to judge us and make assumptions about why we're together. Let them, Ella said fiercely. I don't care what anyone thinks as long as I have you. Hunter laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. When did I become the pessimist and you become the optimist? When you taught me that hope is worth the risk, Ella replied softly. You jumped into a pool to save a stranger without knowing if you'd succeed. That's the kind of courage I want in my life, Hunter. The courage to try even when the outcome is uncertain. They talked for hours after that, working through practical concerns and emotional vulnerabilities with newfound honesty. Ella explained her business obligations and the public-facing aspects of her life that couldn't be avoided entirely, but promised to shield Hunter and Jamie from as much of it as possible. Hunter shared his fears about adequacy and his concerns about maintaining his independence, while accepting help when genuinely needed. By the time Ella left near midnight, they had established ground rules and boundaries, had aired fears and made promises, had committed to building something real despite all the obstacles in their path. As Hunter watched her drive away, he felt lighter than he had in weeks. The fear hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had been joined by something equally powerful. Hope, the stubborn, Resilient hope that maybe, just maybe, love could bridge even the widest gaps if both people were willing to meet in the middle. Hunter checked on Jamie one more time before bed, looking at his sleeping son with a heart full of gratitude and determination. He had taken a risk tonight, had chosen vulnerability over safety, connection over isolation. And while he couldn't predict the future or guarantee a happy ending, he knew with absolute certainty that he had made the right choice. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone in. Sometimes healing requires trust. Sometimes love means taking a leap of faith and believing you'll be caught. And for the first time in 4 years, Hunter Tate was ready to leap. 6 months later, Hunter stood in the backyard of a modest house in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of Ashford Heights, watching Jamie chase fireflies in the warm June twilight. The house was small by Ella's standards, enormous by Hunter's, a compromise they had reached together after months of discussion. 3 bedrooms, a decent yard, in a good school district but not ostentatiously wealthy. A home that felt like theirs. Rather than his, Ella emerged from the kitchen carrying lemonade, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing shorts and one of Hunter's old t-shirts. She looked relaxed and happy in a way that made Hunter's chest tighten with affection. She handed him a glass and slipped her arm around his waist, both of them watching Jamie's joyful pursuit of the glowing insects. "He's so happy here," Ella murmured. "We all are," Hunter replied, kissing the top of her head. The journey to this moment had not been smooth or simple. There had been arguments about money when Ella wanted to pay for things Hunter insisted on handling himself. There had been uncomfortable moments at events Ella had to attend where Hunter felt completely out of place among her wealthy peers. There had been scheduling conflicts between Ella's business obligations and family time that required constant negotiation. But there had also been breakthroughs and beautiful moments. Ella had started working fewer hours, delegating more responsibilities, prioritizing presence over productivity in ways that initially terrified her but ultimately brought peace. Hunter had slowly learned to accept help without viewing it as charity, recognizing that partnership sometimes meant letting someone with more resources contribute more financially while he contributed in other equally valuable ways. The Tate Community Healthcare Initiative had launched successfully, but this time with Hunter's full involvement and consent. He served on the advisory board, providing perspective from people who actually used these services. His input shaped programs in ways that made them more effective and dignified for recipients. The work gave him purpose beyond his handyman jobs and made him feel like a genuine partner in Ella's philanthropic efforts. Jamie had adjusted remarkably well, thriving with the stability of a 2-parent household and the expanded opportunities Ella's presence provided without losing the groundedness Hunter had worked so hard to instill. He still attended public school, still had chores and responsibilities, still understood the value of money and work. But he also had access to experiences and resources that enriched his life in meaningful ways. "I was thinking," Ella said, watching Jamie catch a firefly and examine it carefully before releasing it. "Maybe we could take a vacation this summer. Just the 3 of us. Somewhere Jamie would love." "He's been talking nonstop about dinosaur fossils," Hunter mentioned. "There's a dig site in Montana that offers family programs." "Perfect," Ella said, pulling out her phone to make notes. "I'll have Catherine research options. Nothing too fancy, somewhere hands-on and educational." Hunter smiled at how naturally she had adapted to their different approach to life. A year ago, Ella might have suggested a luxury resort or international destination. Now she thought in terms of what would matter to Jamie, what would create meaningful memories rather than expensive ones. "You've changed," Hunter observed. "We both have," Ella replied. "You're more open, less defensive. I'm more grounded, more present. We're better together than we were separately." It was true. Hunter had softened in ways he hadn't realized were possible, allowing himself to accept love and support without constant suspicion of motives. The walls he had built to survive grief had come down gradually, revealing the person he used to be before loss had hardened him. And Ella had discovered that her identity extended beyond her business success, that she could find fulfillment in quiet evenings at home and simple gestures of care rather than only in boardroom victories. As darkness fell and they called Jamie inside for bed, Hunter reflected on the improbable journey that had led them here. A random Tuesday afternoon, a pool emergency, a split-second decision to dive in without hesitation. That single moment had cascaded into something neither of them could have predicted, changing the trajectory of 3 lives in profound ways. After tucking Jamie in together, a ritual they had developed that Jamie insisted on every night, Hunter and Ella sat on the back porch with glasses of wine, enjoying the summer breeze and comfortable silence that comes from genuine companionship. "You ever think about that day?" Ella asked. "About what would have happened if you hadn't been there?" "Sometimes," Hunter admitted. "But more often I think about what would have happened if you hadn't come back, if we hadn't taken the risk of trying." "Scared?" Ella teased gently, echoing their conversation from months ago. "Always," Hunter replied with a smile. "But happy too. Grateful. Hopeful in ways I forgot were possible." Ella leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never thanked you properly, you know. Not just for saving my life that day, but for saving me from a life that looked successful but felt empty. You gave me something more valuable than all the money I've ever earned." "What's that?" "What's that?" "A reason to live that goes beyond achievement or acquisition," Ella said softly. "You showed me that meaning comes from connection, from being present, from loving and being loved. That's worth more than any fortune." Hunter wrapped his arm around her shoulders, holding her close as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. He thought about Sarah, about the love they had shared and lost, and felt gratitude rather than guilt. She would have wanted him to be happy, to give Jamie a full life, to open his heart again. This wasn't betraying her memory, but honoring it by choosing life and love over isolation and fear. "You know what I learned?" Hunter said. "That sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back. I pulled you from that pool, but you pulled me from drowning in grief and loneliness. We rescued each other." "We did," Ella agreed. "And we keep rescuing each other every day when we choose this, choose us, despite all the reasons it shouldn't work." They sat together in peaceful silence, 2 people from impossibly different worlds who had found common ground in the most unlikely circumstances. Their story would never be simple or conventional, would always require effort and compromise and conscious choices to bridge their differences. But it was theirs, built on honesty and respect and the kind of love that grows stronger through challenges rather than being destroyed by them. Life has a beautiful way of surprising us when we least expect it. A random Tuesday can change everything. A single act of courage or kindness can set in motion events that transform multiple lives in profound ways. And sometimes, the most important decision we make is not the heroic one made in a moment of crisis, but the daily choice to be brave enough to trust, vulnerable enough to love, and strong enough to keep choosing each other when it would be easier to walk away. Hunter Tate had jumped into a pool to save a stranger, without knowing who she was or what it would mean for his life. And in doing so, he had saved himself too. Discovering that the heart he thought was too broken to risk again was actually resilient enough to love deeper than ever before. That the walls built to protect can also imprison, and that sometimes the greatest courage is found not in isolation, but in connection. As fireflies danced in the darkness, and Ella's breathing grew steady and peaceful against his shoulder, Hunter felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. Not the absence of challenges or concerns, but the deep, abiding peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you belong, with exactly who you're meant to be with, building exactly the life that matters. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.